Hey everyone, in today's video, I'm going to show you how to build a progress bar like this. So basically what's happening here is I have a Celery task set up in my Django project, and it's a long running task. And what I'm doing is I'm getting the progress of this task on the front end. So we see we have 99 of 100 processed, then success. If I refresh the page, it's going to start all over again. So we see the bar slowly growing over time, and that's because it's the live progress of the Celery task. So in this video, I'll show you how to do this, and you might need to have a little bit of background in Celery. I'm just gonna go through the Celery part pretty quickly, but even if you don't, I still think the video will be pretty easy to follow. So now let's get into building this. To begin, I already have a virtual environment set up and I've installed Django. So now let me start up a project. So I'll call this project Django admin start project. I'll call it progress. And then I'll cd into that directory, and I'll create an app called example. Then I'll go over to the settings and add example to the installed apps. So we'll do that here. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to create the view that's going to have this long running process. And to begin, I'll have the process inside of the view itself so we can see how long it takes. And then I'll have it in the Celery task. So I'll go over to views, create a function, and I'll just call this index. And it's going to return a template called index. So we'll say example / index. In here, I'll create a directory called templates, followed by a directory called example. And then in there, I'll create that index.html. And I'll add some scaffolding, and I'll just say done. Okay. So what I want to do here to simulate a long running process is to use sleep. So from time, import sleep, and I'll sleep for, let's say, 5 seconds. Okay, so this will take 5 seconds to run. So now let me create a URLs file for this. So from Django.urls import path. Then I need the URL patterns list, and I'll add the path in here. And I need to import the views. So from .import views, and then I can use views.index, and I'll give it the name of index as well. Okay. Now I need to add that to my project URLs. So include here, and then it's going to be on the index, include example.urls. So this should be enough. So let me run this. So Python manage py run server, and open this. And we see it's loading, and it's taking a moment to load, and it's done. So that took about 5 seconds, and that's because I have that sleep in the view. So this is the simulation of my long running process. It's a lot easier to use sleep than it is to create an actual process that takes a long time. So sleep is just as an example. So now that I have that there, I want to set up everything for Celery. So I'll go back to VS Code, and I'll install Celery. And I'll also install Redis. So just waiting for this to finish. And now I can install Redis, because I'll be using Redis as my broker. So I have that. Let me go over to Heroku. So I have this Heroku project set up. It doesn't really have anything in it except for this Redis add-on. So I'll open this up, and I'll take the connection string out of here. So I'll go to settings and then view credentials, and I have my URI here. I'll just take this and I'll paste it into my settings file. So if I go to settings.py, at the bottom, I'll add in the Celery broker URL. Just add that in, and I added some extra white space. And then after it, what I'll do is I'll add the other configuration values. So Celery accept content. It's going to be JSON. And then we need the Celery task serializer, and this is going to be JSON as well. First one is in a list. The second one is just a string. And for this, I need to set up a backend as well. So to use a progress bar, I need to be able to save the progress somewhere. And in Celery, that's the idea of a backend. So backend. and it's going to be Django.db. And to use this, I need to install a library called Django Celery Results. So pip install Django Celery Results. And then once I have that, I just have to migrate everything. So Python manage.py migrate, because what it does is it creates a table in the database, and I actually need to add this to my install apps before I can migrate it. So I just migrated all the default stuff. So Django underscore Celery Results is the name of the app. Then I can migrate again, and we see I have it here. And if I go to the admin dashboard, so let me create a super user, create super user, just so we can see. Create a password. And then I can go to my admin dashboard and we can take a look. So /admin, login. And here we see task results. So this comes from that app that I just installed, Django Celery Results. And like I said, the reason why we need this is because to have the idea of saving progress so you can see it after being pulled, like you have to put it somewhere. So you need this library. Otherwise, you won't be able to know what Celery is doing. All right, so now we need to bring in the code for Celery. So I'm just going to the documentation for Celery, and I can just bring this into my project because I don't need to modify it much. So I'll create a file called Celery in my progress folder here. So new file celery.py, put this here, and I just need to change the name. So instead of project, it's progress because that's the name of my project. And then I need to add some code to the dunder init. So I'll just copy this and I'll bring it into dunder-init.py and I'll save that. So now what I need to do is I need to create a task for Celery. So let me close these out. Don't need them anymore. So back in my example app, I'm going to create a file called tasks, and I'm going to import from Celery a decorator called shared task. And then I can use it like this. So shared task, and I need to say bind equals true because I'll be passing information about the task itself somewhere in the function. So bind equals true basically passes that information to the function that I decorate here. And I'll just call this go to sleep, and I'll have some kind of duration on it. But like I said, that bind equals true passes information to the function. So as a first argument, I need to have self. So it's going to pass some data to self as the first argument. And then what I can do is I can, have it sleep. So I need to import sleep again. So from time import sleep. And we're going to sleep for the duration, right? And for now, I'll just return done. Okay. So now I can remove this. And instead of this, what I'll say is from.tasks import go to sleep. And to use this, I can call go to sleep. And then I have to call .delay. This sends it over to Celery. And then I can pass in the time, which is 5. So now I need to open up a new terminal, and then I'll start up my virtual environment again. And here I'm going to start a Celery worker because I need Celery to be running so I can send a task over to Celery to be run in the first place. So to do that, it's going to be Celery-A, and then you can give the name of your project. So in my case, progress. And then I'm starting a worker, and I need to call -L and info so I can see everything. And progress has no attribute Celery, so I think I'm in the wrong directory. Okay, so I'll try that again. Okay, so if everything works correctly, you should see the task that you created. So if I just go back up here, I see example.tasks.go-to-sleep, and then there's a debug one that I put in the Celery one when I copied that code. And then we see it's connected to Redis, which is from Heroku. It gives this warning that you shouldn't be running this in debug mode, but I'm on my local machine, so this isn't a big deal. So I have Celery running. So if I go back to my other terminal, let me restart the app. And now when I go to the home page, the index, I expect it to load immediately. So I'll click this, and we see it's already done loading. So what I can do here is if I can go to site administration and go to task results, and I'll see a task in here, and then we see some information about it. So we see example.tasks.go-to-sleep, see the time that was completed, and we see the task ID. And we just see some things in here that are, relevant to the task running. We see the result, which is done. That's exactly what I passed back from the function that's being decorated by the share task. So now that I have this, let's get into the whole progress part. So I'll need to bring in another library, and it's called Celery Progress. And to install it, it's just celery-progress. Doesn't have Django in the name for some reason, even though it's a Django library. So pip install celery-progress. And to use it, I need to add it to my installed apps. So I'll go here, and we'll say celery_progress. And then I need to add a URL for it. So I'll go to my project URLs, and underneath the one for examples, I'll create another path, and I'll just call this celery-progress, the trailing slash, and I'll include a celery_progress.urls. Okay, so that's going to create a URL for me where I can actually see my progress, and I'll go there once I have it running. And then what I need to do is I need to go to the task again. And in the task, I want to import from celery progress.backend. I want to import a class called progress recorder. And this progress recorder is really easy to use. So you need to instantiate it. So progress recorder equals progress recorder. And you pass in the information about the task, which is why I use this bind equals true in the self. So you can pass self to progress recorder. And then I need a way of telling this how much progress I've had. So instead of just doing one sleep here, what I'll do is I'll loop. So for, let's say I in range of 5, so we'll loop 5 times. I'm going to sleep for the duration, right? So if this is 10 seconds, I'll sleep for 50 seconds. If it's 20 seconds, I'll sleep for 100 seconds, right? Because it's just looping 5 times. And then what I need to do is I need to use the progress recorder to set the progress. So progress recorder sets_progress. And there are 2 things that you have to pass to it. So the first thing that you pass to set progress is the current progress. So for example, in this one, you can say I plus 1. So that will give you 1 as one part of the progress. And then you need to pass in the total, right? So the first argument is going to be variable depending on how much progress has occurred. And the second part is going to be static because it is the total amount of progress that is to be done. So in this example, I want to loop 5 times. So basically what happens is first loop, this will be 0 plus 1 will be 1. So it's going to be 1/5 of the progress, so 20%. Second loop, 2/5. Third loop, 3/5. Fourth loop, 4/5. And the fifth loop, it's going to be 5/5, so 1. So 100% progress at that point. So if this were 50, this would need to be 50. Whatever the range is here, this second argument needs to be exactly the same. So of course, in a real example, you might not have something this simple, but if you were looping over a bunch of records, let's say you had 100 records, then whatever you're using to count how many times you're looping over the data, you need to have that as your second parameter here. If these are different, then this no longer makes any sense, and it's going to be confusing to your users because the progress won't match the actual progress that's going on. And then as a third parameter, you can pass in some kind of note. So I can say on, and I'll make this an F string. I'll say on I, right? So this is basically, what iteration of the loop. Let's say on iteration I. How about that? So this is going to be seen once I do this. So remember, this is, it's going to loop over 5 times for the duration. And if I go back to views, and if I call this with 5, it's going to be 5 times 5, so 25 seconds. So I'll leave that the same. What I'll do is I'll restart the Celery worker just to make sure everything works correctly. And it's running again. So now I'll go back to my app, and I will start up my server. I'll go to the page. I'll refresh. And now if I go in my admin dashboard, I expect to see the new task, but I don't, so something went wrong. So let's see. Everything looks fine here. And then we see everything looks okay here. We see it succeeded in 25 seconds. So for some reason, it's just not writing the progress. So let me go back to the task. So we have the progress recorder. We're setting the progress. And let me go back to the admin dashboard, refresh. Oh, there it is. I don't know why it didn't appear the first time. But anyway, it says done. So let me try that again. So let me start the task. It should send it. And now let me go back, refresh. And there it goes. Oh, so I just wasn't patient enough. So if I go down here and see at the result data, I see current 1, total 5. If I refresh, current 2, total 5%, 40. Current 3, iteration 2. And then current 4, 80%, iteration 3. And I'm just refreshing here and it's done. Okay, so basically what's going on is for all the intermediate steps, it's going to update as a JSON dictionary. And then for the final step, when everything is done, then it just displays what gets returned from the function, which is done. So I can also look at this directly when I use the task ID in the URL. So let me go back to the code and I'll make this run longer so we can see it. So instead of 5 seconds, I'll have it run for 10 seconds. So I'll save. And then I will run it again. Okay, so let me wait for the new ID to show up. So just refreshing, and there we go. Not sure why there's a slight delay. But anyway, I'm taking this ID, and I can go to /celery-progress/ the ID that I copied, and then a trailing slash. And then I see some JSON data for this. So I see current 2, total 5%, and then I'm on iteration 2. And I'll just keep refreshing. And as I refresh, we'll see that it increments and it's eventually going to be current 4, which it is now. Iteration 3, it's 80% done. And then once it gets to the final iteration, it says 100% for everything. And then the result is done, right? So this is basically what's going to be called from the JavaScript every so often to get the progress. And then the JavaScript will take care of actually updating the visual display of the progress bar. So to show this, what I'll do is I'll send that task ID to the template. So task equals go to sleep.delay. So this just means that when I call go to sleep, it's going to return the task ID for this particular Celery call. And then I can pass that to the template. And I can say something like task ID equals, or is going to be the task ID, or this should be task.task ID. So it's going to send it to the template. If I open up the template again, I can bring in the stuff from the library Celery Progress. So load static, because I'll need some static stuff in there. And then what I'll do is I'll go to the documentation. Let's see. So they have the example here. So basically you have a div, that's the progress wrapper. So I'll put that under done. And then we have a script, and I'll put that under. And then finally we'll have the actual progress bar. So I'll use the vanilla.js one. Just put it down here. And let me format this a little bit better. Okay. So now when I run this, let me just restart the servers. So I'll restart Celery, and then I'll restart the Django server. I can go over to here, and I'll go to the index, run it. We see done, and it's not displaying properly. I guess I didn't, I completely forgot the script tags around this. So let me put script and then script here. And we'll try that again. So I'll go to the index. Now we see 0 of 100 process. And let's see if anything changes as this gets updated. Remember, it takes about 10 seconds. So it should go to about 20 of 100 process. Okay, so we have 1 of 5 process on iteration 0. This is the note that I have. And then as it does more, we get this. And if I want this to go faster so we can see progress, I just have to make this a little longer. So instead of 5, I'll do 100. And then in here, I'll sleep for 1 second. So we can kind of see the progress bar building. So if I run this again, I get a different task. And what I forgot to do is I forgot to change the total here. So like I said, this has to be the same as this. The number of loops and the total here needs to be the same. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. So I can do this again and run it. And I feel like, oh, so anytime you make a change to the task, you need to restart the Celery server. So let me do that because it's kind of kept there. So I'll restart the worker, and then I'll restart my Django project, and I'll go here and I'll run this again. Okay, so 0 of 100 process, and now we can see the bar is slowly growing because it's iterating over 100 times, and each second it finishes. So we can see it kind of building here. So that's the default progress bar that they give you in the library. If you want to change it, you can just go to the documentation and take a look. And it talks about how to customize it on the JavaScript side, but the basic idea is the same. You just have an element, you're basically inserting the progress into that element. So that's really it for this video. I just wanted to show you how to set that all up. If you have any questions about using any of this, feel free to leave a comment down below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please subscribe. So thank you for watching, and I will talk to you next time.